Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hey, beautiful listeners. Welcome to another episode of Third Eye Awakening. I'm really excited to talk to Austin today about his awakening process, his psilocybin trip that really changed things for him, his forays into the brilliance of Alan Watts and Thoth, and so much more. So Austin is currently working as a bartender, but he has plans to start his own podcast too because he wants to be similarly a lighthouse, basically just flashing the light of expansive consciousness and contributing to this whole beautiful awakening journey we're all on together. So welcome, Austin. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. What a beautiful introduction. And thank you for the opportunity for having this conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it. So what has your spiritual awakening been like? Like what sort of kicked it all off for you? Or were you one of those people who was sort of always awakened?
It had to be kicked off for me. So back when I was in high school, my parents actually got divorced my freshman year. So then on, I decided I had to be like super independent and had to do everything myself. And that almost forced me into the matrix a lot sooner than I would have been, maybe before I had possibly gotten indoctrinated into certain ways of thinking. But it made me realize early on that just things did not fit. Something just felt out of place, and I had trouble dealing with that for several years until I started to read Alan Watts, hear about the way he thought about things and how the world, the universe is just a drama. We're just going through it. The whole point of it is to experience it. So expecting anything else out of it is a lot. And so I started doing research like that, but I had no practical feeling because, well, I should say immediately after they got divorced, I dove into like Fellowship of Christian Athletes and dove into the Bible because I wanted to find that light. I wanted to find that fatherly figure because I'd lost a lot, but it just never resonated with me. Something about everything about the organized religion of it all didn't quite resonate with me. So eventually I shaved that off and spent a lot of time thinking that there was nothing, that we were just a part of evolution that happens to be here and is a blimp and is gone. I soon discovered that all that was wrong, and that we are all.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, did you grow up Christian? Like, were you raised either Christian or just like in a Christian community, meaning like was your town kind of predominantly Christian, so it was really easy for that to be like a first spiritual pull into like understanding spirituality?
Right. Yeah. So I'm originally from Georgia, so grew up, born and raised with Christian-based faiths. Christmas, Easter, got taught the story, but was never really churchgoer or anything like that. So definitely not a devout Christian or anything like that. But it definitely left markers on how I was raised and shaped who I became because of how predominantly it was around.
Yeah. Yeah. I really relate to that part of just like the organized religion part, not really resonating. Like it's not necessarily the fundamental messages, but the way that they're structured and then the requirement to follow those specific interpretations.
It's crazy to me later on that one of the reasons I find that so unsettling and I guess doesn't resonate is because I find that when anybody tells you that there needs to be an intermediary between you and God, something is wrong, because that connection is always, it's internal. There's no one between you and source itself.
Yeah, I agree so much, like so much that, and especially even one might wonder as an Akashic reader, how can you agree with that if you're being an intermediary? But I feel like the magic that comes through the Akashic records is really just hooking up people up and validating what they already kind of know, but don't have the confidence to be certain of. And then when they hear it from somebody else, they're like, oh yeah, I do have my own connection to
Right.
God or to source or whatever it is. And that I don't need to outsource that to anybody else.
Right. Well, and that brings up an idea I had with one of my really good friends who was I forgot what we were having a conversation about, but whatever I said was exactly what he needed to hear, and I had a realization that like maybe that these original thoughts and ideas are not coming from me. They're it's the universe using me as the outlet for this person to get that experience. You know, you are exactly doing what you need to do for that person's hero's journey in a way.
Yeah,
Um,
really.
yeah, just allowing the universe to flow through you and let yourself be a mouthpiece for it has done so much for me.
I love that. I love that, and I resonate with it so much. Just that the universe is speaking. Well, there's this one song by, I don't know if you could call them a band because it's two sisters named Coco Rosie, and it's
Hmm.
God has a voice. She speaks through me, but the way that they sing it is like he and she are kind of overlapped together on
Right.
the word. And anyway, I just like I remember hearing that so long ago and being like, yes, yes, like we're all God's mouthpiece, and but we also, have our lower vibrational human ego selves. We're
Right.
a
Right.
mouthpiece for that too.
It's all tied in. It's crazy because once you accept, there's another song called by Wookie Foot called "You're It," and they basically talk about like once you dive in the flow with the universe, like first it's rough because you're getting knocked around in the flow of it all, but once you allow yourself to float and go, it's just the universe is doing your thing. Your intuition knows what's going on.
Yeah, it's true. No, it knows what's up. So
Mhm.
so what happened next on your spiritual awakening journey after you kind of like went through your, I don't know if you would call it an atheist period, but like the post Christian fellowship period, and just sort of being like maybe there is just nothing, and then obviously you got pulled back into it.
Right. Well, so just I loved biology, so after a while, the whole us being a millionth of a chance of evolution just made sense. So it was like, okay, well, after you die, that's it. It's nothingness, and that definitely didn't resonate for a while. But I couldn't figure out what it was, why it didn't. And I think now that I look back on it, that was a part of a lot of my issues, is because it was internally like I thought I was nothing really. And so a lot of things happened that weren't, great for me. But eventually, through reading Alan Watts and listening to Alan Watts, I got connected to Ram Dass and Terrence McKenna. So the idea of psilocybin mushrooms started to creep its way into my mind. I've heard plenty of stories about people experiencing these otherworldly things, and that's something I had sought to get from when I dove into Christianity, is to realize, to feel that there was something more. And in particular, there was a Sam Harris paper he wrote about his experience doing psilocybin and stuff like that really had me inspired to try it. But being as it's not easily accessible where I'm at, I was just like, if I ever come across it, I come across it. So then I just kind of waited and let the universe do its thing. But one day, I had a buddy come by and he's like, "Yo, I've got some shrooms." I was like, "Yo, let me get some of those." But I was kind of terrified to do them because I was scared of what was in my own mind. I didn't want to know what was in the abyss, because you stare long enough into the abyss stares back. But I gave it a shot, and the first time I did shrooms was like a small dose, and I don't know if you have any experience with them or not, but like the first, like a 1 gram dose just makes you really happy, elated, on cloud nine. I was like, okay, wow, that definitely, I felt that. Did some research into about how the effects and why I did that, but I definitely didn't feel otherworldly experience. So I upped it up to 3.5. And as I got the sacred geometry coming to the forefront of my vision and everything like that, I found a way to distract myself to not dive deeper. So I was like, okay, this is enough playing games. I think Terrence McKenna said the thing with mushrooms is you can't really take too many, but you can take too little, and your ego can allow itself to grip onto this reality. And so I went like a couple of weeks eating completely organic and clean, down to like the natural way we should be, like unprocessed stuff. And then I fasted for a day before ingesting the 5 grams. And I definitely got to peek my head through the veil. It was an incredible experience because I was listening to some music and just vibing with my dogs, and just everything started to fade away. And like I dissolved into nothingness but infinity at the same time, which is a very surreal experience to talk about, but it was just such a feeling that like I knew I became one. And for a second there, I was like, I got why monks had meditated for for all their life, and why people work to do these incredible spiritual feats to achieve these states of mind, because it's so beautiful how much more there is out there beyond this reality. And once I saw that, and once I felt like being one with everything, just my entire life changed. I realized that the world really is what you make it every day. So yeah, that was a it was pretty life changing for me.
Yeah, did it like so moving forward? To me it sounds like if I was going to use Amy's lingo to, I don't know, categorize ish what you're describing, it sounds like you sort of like redissolved back into the 0 point field, or the mini 0 point field that we access through our heart, which is like fifth dimensional consciousness, is that being able to return to that and still be a human at
Right,
the same time. And so, which is amazing. And I agree with you. I think that's why, you know, spiritual people pursue this. And it's hard for us in the Western world because we have so much competing distraction and noise, and so much,
right,
we receive so much programming to sort of direct us away from this. But my husband, he has a past with substance use, and he went through the program and got clean and everything. But he says often that, like, you know, of course, we know that a lot of the time people get into substances because they have traumatic experiences that they're trying to suppress, and they just want to
right,
feel good and they don't know how to. But also that people, he said, I think a lot of people use substances because they're chasing that feeling, that return to like something more. I feel like that's kind of what we're all after these days. Like you get a taste of
right.
it, you're like, wait, what?
I agree. Well, and it's wild when you look at how they have certain very natural things scheduled on the drug policies in terms of, especially here in the US, like they don't want you to have things that can really waken your mind, if
Right. And all the propaganda around it, right? Like the way that it's
it's,
like really demonized. And yet you can,
I,
like my partner was just telling me about how he was like, "Did you know that you can die from ingesting Visine?" And I was like, "What?" He was like, "Yeah, there's this no, my mom said that. There's this true crime thing that she watched where a wife killed her husband by putting Visine in his drink or whatever because it's
that's
clear,
wild.
whatever." And I was like, yet this is accessible for us, that we can just buy it off the counter, off the shelf. But anything that expands our consciousness and reconnects us to our power as like a fractal expression of the oneness, the one, you know,
Right.
gigantic consciousness, is like very illegal. Depends on where you are, like you said, but it's hard to access. Historically, it's been super demonized. So much propaganda around it.
Right. It's definitely been frowned upon. But I also, wildly enough, when I learned about the precession of the equinox as a whole, and like we've been for the past 13,000 years pointing away from source.
Yeah.
So like we for the past 13,000 years, it's been a time of spiritual muddy water, basically, because that's the way that the way time generally rotates and whatnot, I guess. And the Aquarius is supposed to be the turning point of us coming back. And it's wild that we have these conversations more and more every day,
True.
and these things are becoming accepted more and more every day. So it really gives me hope for the future on where we're heading.
Yeah. And also just that, like, actually maybe this is just all kind of like you said, like Alan Watts says, it's just the dance that we're doing. It's it just is what it is, and that's all it is.
Exactly.
And it's okay. We don't necessarily have to fight against it. We can choose which way we want to orient our attention, but we don't have to feel like we're fighting for good to, be victorious and whatever.
Right.
It's just
Well, because
cycles.
you got to think evil is a necessity for good to exist, and like I think
Mm,
I've been doing a lot of thought process on like evil existing because
because it's
I,
terrible.
it's terrible. I mean, it's terrible and it's rampant, but like it's a necessity in someone's hero's journey, and I feel bad for the families that are, I guess, karmically tasked with
Yeah,
protruding this evil because they're going to get karmically punished, but it's also what they need to be doing.
yeah.
Because if they're not the ones to do it, then there's nothing to keeps the wheel moving, if that makes sense.
I know that's what I found too, actually, and I found it through the Akashic records and, in conversation with somebody, which is why I love having these conversations because it's just like, woof, the clarity suddenly comes, and it was that, in no way minimizing or condoning the experience of suffering that exists on the human plane and the animal
Right.
plane, like on Earth, but in order to sort of like find a place to not be at odds with it internally, what I received was that the darkness, or I don't even like using that word because what did the nighttime ever do to me? Like
Exactly.
it can't be faulted, but like evil, so to speak, exists as a necessary a necessary being, or
Necessary evil.
yeah, right, in order to anchor the polarity in which free will really gets to be like played out. Because I was saying this on tinfoil hat, that the higher dimensions, you can't you just don't have the same level of free will, and it's not because you're not allowed to, it's because the consequences are so immediate, and the sense of connection with everything is so clear, like unlike being a human on earth where you can forget that you're one with everything.
Right.
Higher dimensions, you just know that at all times, so you really can't perpetuate evil or pain on any other being because it's on
Because
yourself. Yeah,
you sense it. Yeah.
yeah,
This
and so, but in the third dimension where we really get to explore, as souls, we get to explore like what we are, including the absence of the light. Like inc- we get to choose the light and we get to choose the non-light. And in order
right.
to be able to choose that and understand ourselves in relationship with that scale of options, that non-light or evil has to exist.
Exactly. Well, and it's wild because it's like people are taught to be ashamed of the non-light side or the dark side of themselves. Sam talks about your dark passengers a lot on Tinfoil Hat, and it's wild to me because people want you to to bottle up those negative bad emotions, but all that does is bottle them up for them to explode out in a very negative way later. Like no one should ever feel ashamed of feeling the emotion of hate. It's to act upon the emotion of hate in a certain way that you can't do. But your emotion and your legitimacy of it is just as real. But people don't think that they're supposed to hate people, so they just bottle it up, and eventually, it comes out in a not great way.
Right, or like totally, or the same with like lust, or like I know Sam talks about that a lot too, and that was really brilliant when I first heard him say that he thinks that all like sexual preferences and air quotes fetishes and sexual orientations are demonized, so to speak, to fill us with shame and self-loathing. But I think that's so true. Like, for example, feeling lust for somebody is just a human response to being a biological being that has an impetus to engage in sexual activity for
Right.
reproduction and for joyful purposes. And so, like, but we get trapped in these hell loops of like self-shaming because we experience internal states that we've been told or we've come to believe are distasteful and negative and like base or animalistic, but
Right.
just it's like an it's just an option that's available to us in an infinite sea of options of, and like you said, it's sort of then from there, the question is, or the progression is like, what do I choose to act on? And, that's kind of where the free will part really comes in.
Right. Well, and once you find that you start living in love and light and truth, you'll always be down the right path. It's amazing which direction you can set yourself up for, day in and day out. Because I think heaven and hell are in your mind every day like that, and if you create the negative thoughts and negative image, and you let the news dictate what's going on in the world to you, then you're not even creating your own world. You're allowing other people to create it for you. So are you really, even happy with yourself?
Oh, so true.
A lot of times I like to talk to my friends about it. It's like, okay, let's just assume that what I believe is true in terms of that we manifest our reality every day. Like, I think we experience, like, the reality I'm experiencing is not the same reality you're experiencing. We're actually in two different universes right now,
Right.
but like like our universes are interacting. Same thing with people at work. Like, they're interacting at that time, but when I get in the car and go home, our universes are completely different. So there's a lot of times, because of similar indoctrination, we all have the same view of the same things, but in reality, you're creating your own universe every single day. So if you allow yourself, so it's like, if you really have the power to create your universe, are you allowing yourself to create that universe, or are you allowing other people to create it for you? And a lot of times that's when they realize, okay, well, all these things that I've been told are just things I've been told, not things I've experienced or felt or anything like that. So it's just an interesting way to look at things, I'd say.
Yeah. So, okay. So you feel like we're all living in a separate universe. Do you mean that, like, literally a separate universe or a separate perspective of the universe? I'm so interested in.
Maybe a separate perspective of the universe or the reality. Like, if I were to pass away tomorrow, the universe that I lived in no longer exists, because no one else has the same experiences, the past, the same conversation. No one
Okay.
has that. So, like, the experience that I know is dying with, not dying with me, because my soul will continue on, but in this physical realm, that universe no longer exists.
Right.
It's like the flat earth globe earth thing, like, or hollow earth. Like, none of us have ever seen it, so it could be any of the ones you really want it to be.
I know. I love it. I love that. I love it so much. Like, it's really funny. I remember, what was it? I think it was on Tinfoil Hat. These are my favorite conversations, and he does so many of them, but it was like,
Oh, he needs to archive those, and like, people just need to let it
I
do. It's
know.
great.
He's doing God's work, I swear.
He really is.
There was this one episode where it was a guy from Twitter, Tommy G, maybe. No, Tommy D. Not Tommy
Tommy
G.
D.
Not Tommy G with the big podcast, Tommy D. And he did this whole thread on flat earth. And I was kind of like, I didn't make it all the way through his thread. It was so long, but I was looking at it and I was like, a lot of that stuff gave me pause to think, like, really. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I've never verified with my own eyes that the earth is round, so how do I know? Right? Like, I can totally have that openness to be like, maybe at
Who
least I
knows?
can accept that I can't verify it. I have not yet verified it. And I tried to talk about it with my husband, and he was like, can't talk about this with you. And he's really open minded, but it just, like, it was his thing that, like, he had to draw the line. And I tried talking about it with other people too, and they similarly were like, not,
Yeah.
can't even. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, but you haven't seen it.
Right. Well, and it makes so much more sense. Like, I actually dove into like Hollow Earth with Admiral Byrd and Argatha being within the Earth and whatnot, and it makes so much more sense that, like, the Earth is the center of all these spiritual things happening, and that we are in this localized group, because NASA is not sending back pictures of a planet 13 trillion miles away. That doesn't,
Right.
you can't get me to believe that. So I feel like they make up these egregious numbers to make us feel even more insignificant than we really are. But yeah, who knows what's really out there.
I know. It's actually exciting to me. That's like an exciting thought of, like, who knows? Who knows?
Right.
What,
Werner von Braun, who was one of the lead NASA rocket scientist who came over after Nazi Germany in a paperclip. On his tombstone, it says, I think it's Psalms 19:1, which says something like, "In all of or God showed all of his glory in the firmament in which he created," which is basically like an ode to like, hey, I couldn't break through the dome that you put up there. And it's something interesting to think about.
Yeah, it was super interesting. That was actually the thing that made me reach out to Sam, because I wanted to talk to him about the firmament and the star seeds, and he was like, "You read the Akashic Records?" No, I want to talk about that. And I was like, cool, that's cool too. But yeah, the idea of the dome, like, so what I think it is, my interpretation as he was talking the firmament and the way that like they couldn't get through it, is that the 3D reality is like crystallized into a physical experience, but it's not, it's like a bandwidth of vibration that manifests physically as really unique.
Right.
The rest of the dimensions don't manifest in a physical way. And the place that creation truly comes from, as I've been shown, is the higher dimensions, meaning like the sixth, seventh, eighth dimensions. And we access that by going through, I call it the heart portal, but it's like, because when you return to your heart and when you return to that feeling that you experienced when you did the larger dose of psilocybin, you meld with everything. And so you return to this oneness, and all of a sudden, like, also everything is possible because you realize that's everything and you are everything, so you can create everything. But the cost, or like from the perspective of the dark people, the archons or whatever, the cost of that they're not willing to pay is the connection with that unity consciousness and love, because then they can't do it their way anymore. Like, they really just want to have free will, and they want to create from that place of like self-serving free will. So they can't access anything beyond the physical realm and like space time. So that's like a firmament to them. They can't get through it, but the rest of us can get through it because we dissolve into it and pass through it. Does that make sense? Am I explaining it okay?
That does make a lot of sense, actually. Well, and once you get into like the frequencies of like dimensions and things, and if you don't have a frequency that can't resonate through this field, then you're not getting through that field.
Yeah, like you can't break it open with a rocket ship.
Right.
I've seen that footage too of like, it does really look like they're shooting.
They're trying to get out of something.
Trying to break it, but they can't break it. But it's because it's more like that. Yeah, that tuning your frequency so that you then like match with everything, and you just pass right through it because it's not a barrier to you anymore. So that, anyway, that's why I think I'm not like, I'm not saying that that's the gospel truth and I'm the supreme authority on any of this, but as soon as I heard it, that was my understanding. And that's usually how it works for me, is it just drops in as an understanding that I didn't previously have, that I know is coming to me from a higher place. The question is whether I interpret it accurately through my human psyche or not.
That's awesome, though. Well, and I feel like the way you describe it, I even, maybe I've potentially had maybe access. I don't know if I've ever accessed the Akashic Records, but I've definitely had moments of such like something just clicked. Everything just clicked, and I got this like, this just nugget of information. But like, I love the way you described it in terms of it just being like a mist and not a library, because I've always found the fact that the burning of the Library of Alexandria was one of the worst things to happen to our history because of all the ancient knowledge that was in there. So I guess in my mind, I always equated the Akashic Records to being like a massive Library of Alexandria. But I like the idea that it's not like you're searching for a book. It's just that information is always there. You just have to let it come through.
Yeah, that's just how it feels to me. But I was having this conversation a while ago with somebody and kind of was chuckling to myself because I was like, it's like we've switched from, because a lot of people describe it as the internet, and I hadn't heard anybody else describe it that way before, but like how the internet is just, it's information. It's all
It's
around.
just
And we
there.
access it through these portals. That's all I know about it. And I was kind of chuckling because I was like, well, it used to be described as a library back when we were more of an analog society. And then when it turned digital, it's like a bunch of us just started to
The idea switched with it. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think maybe it's because it's what resonates with you as in that form at that time. The internet itself is a wild thing because that came out of CERN, and I think that connects different realities all the time. Like
Did it come out of
you
CERN?
don't, yeah, the CERN was one of the had a big hand in creating the internet, and they've got what all they're doing. They just trying to open all the portals. But it makes sense because when you're talking to some of these people on the internet on Twitter, you don't know. They could not be in this universe at all. You don't know that.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about how wide and far it can go.
Yeah. It's true. I know. It's so I mean, that's just my favorite stuff is to like not rule anything out and not necessarily
Right.
like, fall for everything, so to speak. Like have a sense of discernment, but be like, whoa, it's totally possible. It's totally possible that, you know, people that you're talking to on Twitter or wherever on the internet are, just consciousness from somewhere that isn't necessarily incarnated, but has like tuned into the frequency of that medium and is manipulating it to create a message or whatever.
Right. Like just like Twitter and them create bots out of, dead profiles. The spiritual world, I'm sure, could do the same thing.
I'm
Uh,
sure.
I've got to go answer my door real quick. I will
Okay, no
be
problem.
right back. I'm so sorry about that.
No worries.
But yeah, where were we?
I think we're talking about the spirit world being able to manipulate cool things and cool things,
Yes, yes.
cool things.
Just all the cool things. I mean,
Yeah,
because the spirit world created the world we're in now, so it makes sense that it would have highest power of the ability of manifestation. And I think that's the thing people don't understand is like I used to think manifesting was like, okay, yeah, manifest. Just say it's gonna happen, woo woo. No. But like really the thing is because we are in the three-dimensional world, we do manifest our reality. It just has a lag to it, and you don't quite understand that it's happening. So
I
go
mean,
ahead.
it just makes me so happy to talk about these things because I found the exact same thing. Is like it's being created in higher dimensions. It's literally created before your conscious brain thinks about it. Your conscious brain thinking about it is like I don't know, like several steps into the process, and
It's that your conscious brain thinking about it is like buying the movie ticket and being in the theater when your subconscious was the director and producer who created the
yes,
movie itself.
totally. It's
Yes.
already made. It's made. Like so and it's so funny. And then there's that leg, but the leg is like the fun thing and it's what allows us to like tweak what comes
Exactly.
through, right? Like so we get so bitchy about the leg because we want it to be here right exactly right now. But the leg allows us to like sort of like sculpt it a little bit more and fine tune it a little bit more like oh actually this is how I would like it to be or this is how I feel about it. But it's so funny that we talk ourselves out of the things we want all the time and it's like you said like nah, the movie has been like scripted, cast, directed, like it's been edited, it's a complete package already. Like now all you have to do is show up and enjoy it. So why are you talking yourself out of it because it already exists?
It's kind of funny to see people like your reaction is already too late because it's already you're in the middle of it all anyway. So you've got to be careful what you set yourself up for down the road. So it's a lot about it's all created in here and your thoughts about how you want your day to go, how you think it'll go, and that's how it usually will go.
Yeah. And so do you find that for yourself in like the manifesting process that as you understand it better, you're able to like fine tune it and you're starting to see the results in your life or I don't know, even the word results is so result oriented, but you're starting to see the way that your experience of life in the universe sort of like transforms in response to your understanding.
Definitely, especially after the ego death I had and realized we are one with the universe. I've just allowed myself to manifest, you know, things and just allowing them to come when they're supposed to come. Not setting up myself for expectations of when they should come. Because when you think of yourself as an infinite being, the grand scheme of 4 weeks to even years is really nothing. So there's no reason to ever be impatient with the universe or anything like that. You just gotta manifest the positive things, and they will come. And it's, I wouldn't say, I guess you couldn't say it's been result driven. It's just been, well, it has been. It's been a feeling, and it's just accepting that what is what is, and accepting that I am a part of what is and not separate from what is.
Right. And so what do you think in your observation of people and life, what do you think makes it confusing for people on how to understand what manifestation really is?
People are taught from an early age that everything costs something. So everyone, they instill a scarcity mindset into everybody. So people in their subconscious don't believe that they deserve these things because they're worried about the cost, or they're worried about taking it from someone else, or just not even think they're deserving of these things. And so I think it's a combination of those things, but the biggest one being that scarcity is not really as big of a problem as they like to say it is. And but most people think there's only so much land, there's only so much water, there's only
Right.
so much food.
Yeah. Yeah. So then they're feeling like you have to choose from what is available rather than and settle in that sense rather
Right.
manifesting what you truly want. But even the word, I don't really like have a problem with the word manifestation, but as I use it, I can hear and almost like feel people's misconceptions around it or people's arguments and the way it's been sort of like new aged a little bit.
Yeah, there's been a movement to almost discredit a lot of these words and things, and because of the way it's used. So I know what you mean with that, and what kind of vibrations you're getting from that.
Yeah. So, okay, so I mean, you kind of have explained how that journey through mushrooms sort and that like, expansion of your consciousness has changed your life moving forward in the conversation that we've had, but like has it changed you as a person? Like do you feel like you make different choices now and you live differently than you would have before doing that?
Yeah, I have like a completely different outlook on my plans for the future, and just truly the amount I love myself now is so profound to me, because I used to struggle with self-worth so much up until really that then. And then just the amount I love myself this point has been so life-changing for me that it's been incredible. So
Yeah.
that's been the biggest thing for me, for sure.
Yeah. I feel like it's similarly to say self-love sounds like kind of self-helpy and whatever, or that's what I feel like when I mention it, but when I talk about it, for example, in my Facebook group, I'm just like, that's what it's all about though, and like that's what really really moves the needle and like changes your life, and every wonderful thing that we experience is a manifestation of that self-love. Whereas when we feel
Absolutely.
that low self-worth or self-loathing or insecurity and we're dominated by that, then everything shitty that we experience is a manifestation of that.
Right. Well, and I think that's a big thing on what people's negative thoughts is. They don't actively watch their thoughts. They don't actively look at what they are creating in their own mind.
Yeah.
So you may not realize that you are doing exactly that. You are manifesting. Just like it's like the placebo effect. Like that is almost scientific manifestation, because your body thinks it's getting the medicine, so it heals itself. So in terms of manifestation, I think that's a good way to relate it to people, because you get a sugar pill, but your body assumes it's not and is able to do what it needs to do.
Hmm. Totally. It reminds me too of like, well, I don't know. I've never verified this, but I remember hearing that under hypnosis, like if somebody's deeply in hypnosis and somebody makes the suggestion, "Oh, I'm holding a flame to your skin," then their skin will start to blister because that's the power of their perception. And to me that makes a ton of sense. And so therefore, like, I think that the channel Bashar refers a lot to permission slips and how everything we engage in is just permission slips we're giving ourselves in order to experience, what we what we desire, because that's what we hold ourselves apart from. And so everything, like maybe even the Akashic records are a permission slip, I don't know, that have allowed me to access, my the abilities that I always wanted to have. I don't know, but I think like our perception is super super powerful, and the placebo effect is real in insofar as if you experience healing, you experience healing.
Exactly.
It really
And if
doesn't
it
matter
clears
if
up,
you
it clears
feel
up.
it or not.
Well, and because of the whole coronavirus that's going on this past year, I learned a lot about the nocebo effect, which is instead of your body healing itself by getting a sugar pill, it actually your body can make itself sick by imagining, I don't know, a virus that may not actually be out there. So you can think yourself into being sick, which it just ties in. They say placebo and nocebo and add these scientific terms, but really that's just internal manifestation through and through.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And so how was this last year? Now so at the time of recording, we're in March. So it's like a year
About
ago
it.
that, all the shit went down in North America anyway. How has this last year been for you to navigate in terms of already having like that spiritual experience in place, really?
It's been I mean, it's been turbulent, like in terms of things going on because I worked in the restaurant industry, which got
Mm,
killed off for a few months. But I had more confidence to know that there's always going to be a way. Is like I ended up finding a job at a country club taking care of the greens, and then I got my bartending job back. It actually solidified my thoughts of like, oh, this world is what you created, because while it seemed like just pure chaos going on throughout the world and the country, my personal life was, I was doing great actually. 2020 was one of the best years I've ever had because I was able to grow so much spiritually and learn so much. So honestly, it was really good for me. It showed me a lot.
yeah, that's amazing. That's totally amazing. I think it for me it really helped to. I'm not would never ever say that I didn't get caught up at various points in the emotional stuff that was being deliberately stirred up.
Oh
um,
yeah,
but that I was kind of able, like, fairly quickly to see it for what it was, and then return back to like, oh right, this is the reaction they want, and this is where my power is, and to return to that, and yeah, make the most of the year. I feel like so.
yeah. I mean, especially a lot of times you definitely can't control what happens to you. I mean, you can, but not on the conscious level. You can only react to what happens to you, and you can only control your emotions, and those emotions that you allow to flow through are dictates whether things are good or bad. Because like even if things are bad at the time, Alan Watts, once again, he had a story about a Chinese farmer he had a horse get out, and everyone came by and talked about how terrible it was, and he said maybe. The next day the horse comes back with 7 wild horses, and everyone comes by, oh, that's amazing. It's like maybe. Then the next day his son breaks his leg trying to break a wild horse. Everyone's like, that's terrible. He said maybe. And the next day, the conscription officer comes by to get people for the army, and he doesn't take his son because he has a broken leg. And everyone's like, well, that's amazing. Dude says, maybe. And his whole point is that you never know enough about a situation
Right.
to think it's good or bad. So you should always hold the middle ground when it comes to your emotions and not allow yourself to get too swayed one way or another.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's so brilliant. Austin, this has been such a great conversation. I feel like you totally should start a podcast. I mean, I know that's your intention, but just to like boost you a little bit and be like, you could do it, man. If I did it, like if I did it,
Come
you
on,
can totally do it.
you're a natural at it.
Well, I'm a natural talker, but I'm not tech strong at all. I still don't have a microphone.
Look, I bought these headphones just to hoping they worked.
Yeah. But yeah,
Um,
I feel like you have so many really interesting things to share and so much wisdom in there. You probably are, if not accessing the Akashic field, you're accessing something that gives you the ability to sort of like see with a greater clarity than I would say most people. Can't say because
right,
I haven't talked to everybody in the world, but
right.
feels like it's me. Yeah, a lot of really cool things to share. So I'm going to be on the lookout for your podcast. No pressure or anything, but
Hey, well, I definitely want to hop back on this one again. Maybe we can have another conversation. But once I get one going, I'm going to invite you on.
yay,
Got to
absolutely.
talk about those Akashics. So,
Yeah, I would love it if this is like the first conversation of many that we share together.
oh, I feel like it will be. Your vibe resonates really well, and I've loved this conversation so far. So I look forward to it.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening. You know I love you and you know I appreciate your attention so much and that, you took this hour out of your time to listen and Austin and I just basically hash it out about the universe and what we think is going on and all the cool stuff here. So I hope this enhanced your experience some way that was meaningful to you. And I hope you have a beautiful day or night wherever you are. And I'll catch you on the next episode, everyone. Hello, beautiful soul. Thank you so much for listening to Third Eye Awakening. If you love the show and you want to show me some support as well as get some rich and awesome extra content, then you can support me through Rockfin or Patreon. It really goes a long way to help me create Third Eye Awakening and keep it free for everyone and ad free, because isn't that nice? Isn't it so nice to listen to a podcast without any ads on it? I feel like it is. No shade to anybody who puts ads on their podcast, but I just love creating content and I love having ad-free content. So in order to do that, I've created a Rockfin account and a Patreon account with all kinds of juicy conversations and solo rants and riffs and sort of trainings on spiritual topics, metaphysical topics, just cool shit to anchor in some of that multidimensional light consciousness and expand your mind. Thank you always so much, whether you choose to support or not. It just means the world to me to have you listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me on this episode. I appreciate you more than my words could ever say. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share, and I will catch you on the next episode.